I once knew this Australian guy that said to me that if you wanted to go into the outback, you took a Land Rover. But if you wanted to make sure that you were able to come back again, you took a Land Cruiser. Over the generations and the years that it's been built, the Land Cruiser has stood for versatility, reliability, durability, and go anywhere ability. And now there's a new one. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Toyota Land Cruiser. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. Now, before we get started on this week's road test review of Toyota's new Land Cruiser, it is of course the time where I would just ask you, if you don't mind, just make sure that you're subscribed to the House of Cars channel, please. I've got some subscribers, but I'd like a few more. I can be a bit greedy like that. So if you're not already a subscriber, please consider becoming one. And once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you watch the review, if you enjoy it, and I sincerely hope you do, give it a thumbs up. And of course, as always, don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars we feature on the channel, such as the Toyota Land Cruiser, and of course on the House of Cars channel overall. The Land Cruiser's always played a little bit of, dare I suggest, the sort of like, it's always been the bridesmaid, never the bride in the UK, because of our love for the Land Rover Defender. Obviously, in some respects, the car's main rival. But across the globe, in other territories, the Land Cruiser has been your go-to choice in some respects, if you need that go-anywhere, big, rugged 4x4. You know, whether it's Australia, the Middle East, or Africa, wherever it is, the Land Cruiser tends to be the one that people turn to. And of course, over the years we've had many generations of them, and including here in the UK. But in some respects, it's been a little bit soft, I think, in the UK. You know, it's been a bit forgotten about almost, you know, the last series cars, a bit apologetic, whereas the Defender has grown in stature and almost kind of puffed up its chest and gone, look at me, here we are. Well, Toyota want to get in on that act, and that's why we've got this new one. Now, if you're watching this and you're in another part of the globe, you might know this car as the Land Cruiser 250 series or the Land Cruiser Prado, because Land Cruiser is almost a sort of sub-brand of Toyota, whereas in the UK it's just known as the Land Cruiser. And this is the Land Cruiser I think that's the most rugged and best looking since the old Amazon disappeared off the sort of like the price lists. But here's the question. Given the fact that the Land Rover Defender is so popular, and we now have cars such as the Ineos Grenadier to contend with as well, is this thing any good? Let's find out, shall we? However, as always, let's take a brief look at the main points on the car before we start the full review. So the new Land Cruiser features a body-on-frame construction using Toyota's new global architecture, GAF platform, for that go-anywhere ability. All UK cars are 5 doors with seating for up to 7. For the moment, there's just one engine option, a 2.8 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel unit mated to a new 8-speed automatic transmission that produces 202 brake horsepower and 500 newton metres of torque. It's the first Land Cruiser to adopt electric power steering and a new disconnecting anti-roll bar system. And prices start at just over £77,000 before options. So some serious hardware, some serious engineering for some serious off-road ability, but costing some serious money. Is it worth it? Well, let's put it through a House of Cars road test, and off-road test, and find out. Now, as always, we're going to start with how the car looks, which I think is the big selling point of this new Land Cruiser. Toyota, in my opinion, have done the right thing. They've looked backwards to move forwards, if that makes sense. Even their own marketing sort of like spiel says it's sort of like back to origins is sort of almost the design language that they've used. But it's not retro as such, it's just that it fuses a lot of sort of like, you know, the styling cues of the original sort of like Land Cruisers into a modern and contemporary look, and I think it looks fantastic. I really do. I think they've hit the nail on the head with this. Now, just a little brief explanation. The car I have here is a first edition car, which I'm led to believe is sort of like all sold out as new cars now, although you can still buy used versions of it. So it gets the round headlights at the front. The normal car, the Invincible, which is the sort of like the standard car in the range, has more rectangular headlights here. So that explains maybe the difference in some that you'll see. This is a first edition car, which also gets this really nice paint and the two-tone sort of like paint finish, which I'll talk about in a little second. But the front of it, I love this, okay? So it's quite, I'd say it's fussy, but it's not really. It's made up of lots of different bits. But that's ideal because if you bump it, which let's be honest, you might well do if you do off-road with the car, you don't have to replace a whole front bumper. You can just replace this panel here. You know, so thinking of keeping the costs down about, you know, having to replace bits, you know, that's a separate bit to that, that's a separate bit to that, that's a separate bit there, the light units are separate. So it just all works, but it all kind of cohesively manages to look brilliant. Of course, you get your big Toyota script across the front, forward-facing front camera, neatly integrated down there. A lot of tech on the car, you know, for a Land Cruiser. It's not just old school engineering, there's that as well, but again, managed to be fused with modern technology. And it's a serious off-roader. There's a big old sump guard underneath there. And obviously we'll talk about its off-road credentials in just a little while. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of cooling sort of like down here. There's a big open radiator in there for the intercooler for the turbo diesel engine. The approach and departure angles we'll talk about as we go around the side of the car. But you know, in terms of its approach angle, its wading ability, this is phenomenal. It's nearly as good as the Defender, and that's got air suspension to raise it. This doesn't. This sits on standard coil springs, and there's a reason for that. Again, we'll talk about later. But the design of it, look at it, it's fabulous. And of course, because it's that sort of square edge sort of look, although it's a physically large car, it makes it quite easy to place, whether on the road or manoeuvring around town or even in your local Sainsbury's car park. Now, they've also changed sort of like the rake of the windscreen as well. So they pushed the windscreen back and they've made a much sort of like steeper angle here. Now that does contribute a little bit, dare I suggest, to like noise in some ways. You know, on the motorway there's a little bit more wind noise on the car, and the wipers sit proud of the bonnet. They're not tucked away underneath. And of course these big door mirrors do exactly the same, you know, to amplify the wind noise. But it gives you great visibility out of the car, and that's what you need, especially if you're out and about in places like this. You need to be able to see where you're going and where you're placing the car on roads like this. I think we're off to a brilliant start. Now, apologies for the slightly unconventional camera angle. I just thought it made a nice shot, but it's difficult to get the camera positioned right because there's a fence right there, so apologies. Right, approach angle 32 degrees, ground clearance 215 millimeters, departure angle 17 degrees. That compares favourably in terms of the approach and the actual sort of like ground clearance of the car with its two main rivals, the Defender and the Ineos Grenadier. But the departure angle is a little bit less than those two cars. But in fairness, this is a serious off-road car. And as I was saying earlier, you know, it's a body-on-frame construction. It's a separate chassis, and that is absolutely what you want when it comes down to sort of like off-road ability. And we're going to talk about some of the trick suspension that's on this car. It's trick in terms of it's quite old school mechanical engineering. It doesn't use air suspension, it sits on standard coil springs, and there's a reason for that we'll talk about in the technical section. But you can actually see the chassis sort of like in here. And the other thing that I really love about it that shows you how serious this is just silly things like the big thick mud flaps that have then got this canvas retaining strap attached to them and then bolted to the body, and in them proper off-road stuff. Standard side steps, you get that as standard on the car. Now, this car's running 18-inch wheels, which are standard on the Invincible model, which is the car now. The first edition cars, according to the spec sheet, got 20-inch wheels. But I have to say, I quite like these 18s, and these are also running these big Dunlop AT23 grabber tyres, you know, which are pretty, you know, robust looking things. And I quite like the ride comfort that it gives you on these 18s. So it's interesting. I've not driven it on 20s, but I think the ride comfort on these 18s is good. I mean, look at the profile of these tyres. What are they? They're 235 55 R18s. You know, some serious rubber on the car, and I like that. The other thing that I was talking about, being a first edition, means you get this two-tone paint finish. And this is the thing with the standard Invincible, the paint options are rubbish on it, I think, personally. You know, because you can't get this blue on the standard car, on the Invincible. This is only in a first edition. You can get the sand colour that was also this first edition one, which a lot of the press shots were. But the Invincible only really comes in black, grey and United Nations white. Come on, Toyota, give us something funky like this in the standard car, or a nice dark metallic green or dark metallic red or a navy blue, or just something rather than dull black, grey and, as I say, UN white. Anyway, there we go. Big tall door mirrors on the side there, mounted to the actual doors themselves with your side repeater there, plus a camera tucked underneath there. Standard fit roof rails as well, so you need extra accessories. cross rails to put a roof box on, that type of thing, or bike racks, or roof tents, which are obviously very, very popular these days. So they're standard fit, that's fine. Obviously you get the privacy glass down the side. Now look at the line here where the window line comes. They've dropped the side glass 30mm on the car as well, and it means the visibility. It's not just the front windscreen that gives you good visibility out, you see your side visibility as well, which is fantastic. So whilst the design looks great, it's also got a practical side to it, so it's very easy, as I say, to place such a big car. Good big chunky door handles there in the contrasting black on this one, and as I say, you get further to the back, usual sort of black plastic cladding around the wheel arches to help if you're going through past some gorse bushes, or even just some badly parked trolleys in your local Tesco's. And then of course all ends up in this very upright rear tailgate here. Around the rear of the car, as you can see, it's exactly as the rest of the car. Big, bold lines. Very boxy, which is great for practicality. Now, one thing that has changed is the tailgate opening on the new car. It's now hinged from the top rather than the side, so you don't need to make sure that you've got enough clearance behind you if you want to open the tailgate. Plus as well, you also got this little button here, which opens up the glass separately. So if you just need to chuck your jacket in the back or grab a pair of wellies out, or you've got some dogs in the back of the car and you just want to give them some fresh air, you know, when you're parked up, that's fantastic. So at least a lot better than that side hinge one that you used to have. Of course, the whole tailgate will open up with a handle that's underneath here, the boot plinth at the back with the Toyota embossed in it. Of course, you get your Land Cruiser badge there. And then at the side, big chunky rear lights that you do like mirror obviously the front lights of the car as well. This car's fitted with one of the only options you can put on it, which is the tow bar. So again, various different types of tow bars depending what you want, whether you want a detachable one or a fixed one. This is a fixed one. No, sorry, it's not. This is a detachable one, but that's why you've got this slightly protruding bit of plastic here, which is a guard over the actual tow hitch itself. Nice low set bumper as well, so for loading the car, which we'll see in a second, it's actually quite practical. And of course, you've got this sort of like ribbed foot plate here, which is just black plastic for practical reasons. Of course, you get reversing sensors, and then there's a reversing camera tucked underneath there. So what do we think? Well, I think they've absolutely nailed the design of this car. My only thing about it is the disappointment with the colours, as I say. Now that's fair enough, colour's a personal thing, but if you like a black or a grey car, you're in luck. But if you want something a bit more exciting, you know, as I say, like a dark green or a dark red or a navy blue or sort of even the bright blue, unless it's a first edition car, you can't have it. You're going to have to go for that sand beige or the white, which is the only other two options. And that's the only thing I can really criticise the design on, if I'm honest. Even the standard Invincible with the sort of like the squared off lights, I like that as well. So I can't even decide between the round lights or the square lights. But it doesn't really matter what I think, does it? It matters more what you think, because you're out there buying these cars. What do you think? On looks alone, would this tempt you away from a Land Rover Defender? Or an Ineos Grenadier? Or a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. So when it comes to practicality, like I say, you've got a couple of options here, obviously, because you've got just this opening tailgate. So if you just need to throw your rucksack or your handbag or your jacket in, you can just open that up and away it goes. However, if you do need to open up the big tailgate, then obviously it's just there and it's electrically, it opens electrically, sorry. Now, there's a bit of an issue in some respects with the practicality of Land Cruiser. It's 7 seats as standard in the UK. If you've got the 5 seats up here, then what you have there is about 620 litres of boot space, which is enough, as you see, for the 4 suitcases, plus more down the side, plus you get this bag for the jack and stuff like that, and you can put extra bags in there and stuff. The problem is when you put them in on the solid side like that, because of the height of the parcel shelf, and it is quite a big parcel shelf in fairness, you can't get them all the way to the back seats. But it's still 620 litres, which is more than enough. If you take out that parcel shelf, or the roller blind I should say, I think the total capacity is about 900 litres. So it's perfectly acceptable from that point of view. Now the middle bench, or the rear bench, depending if you've got the rear seats up, your main rear bench, if you fold that down, it's a 60-40 split, and that will take total capacity up to just shy of 2,000 litres in there. I think it's 1,900 and something litres in there. But what we need to do now is actually put the rearmost seats up to let you see what that's like, because when you put those up, obviously you lose a little bit of practicality, because, well, the boot is a lot smaller because you're carrying people, not luggage. So let me take those out. And the wonderful thing is, well, maybe I should have parked on actual incline, but there we go, never mind. Let's see if I can, yeah, so let's take that out. He says, nice and easily. Let's pop that over there. See, if that was car wow you're watching, they'd just have thrown that across there. What you've got here is, you've got to move the seats, bring the seats up electrically. Oh. Bear with me, caller. Right, so there we go. And then you've got head restraints to fold up there. And that reduces your boot space now to about 130 litres, that there, which isn't huge at all. Now, you've got a little bit of underfloor storage here, but that's only for things like an additional number plate and for some tools and stuff. So we've got this, and you pop that there. What can we get in there now? Let's try our carry-ons. Oh, actually, yeah, I suppose if you were to move that, would you still get 2 carry-ons and a rucksack in there? Yeah, there you go. So it's not horrific, you know, and as I say, you've got the ability now to carry people. But bearing in mind, if you're using it, you know, for a family holiday, you need those rear seats. What you're going to need for luggage, well, that's when you need to go for something like a roof box, or for one of those, you know, those Thule sort of like boxes that mount on a tailgate on the back, or a bike rack or stuff like that. But in fairness, I don't know what else you can expect for a full 7 seats. That's why I hate reviewing 7-seat cars, because you lot want to see me get in the back of this car. Right, so we tip the seat forward and it tumbles like that. So let me get into the back here, he says. God, that's graceful. I'll pop that down. Let's see, raise this up. Yeah. Oh, okay. Right, well, my knees are really pushed up. So it is really for kids, you know. I mean, there's leg room, in fairness, and headroom for me, and I'm 5'8". But it's not a full 7-seat car, you know, like a big MPV or anything like that. But again, I suppose if you just had, you know, the weekend there, you know, there was a few of us in the car, it was my brother-in-law's birthday, you know, we were able to put a couple of kids in the back, so it's absolutely fine for that, for a short journey. I don't think you'd want to go far, even as a smaller child. I don't think you'd want to go too far in the back here. But you can, that's the thing, you know. Plus you've got USB-C charge port here, some cup holders, some little ornament tray. Plus you've got ventilation in the back, which is really important. So you get the face vents, or vents, just not face vents, up in the roof, you know, all along the car, which is quite good. So in fairness, it's not bad, and it's probably as good as you're going to expect, again, for a car of this size and class. Right, now that drama is over, let's talk about the actual back seat, the main bit. Well, really good. My sister-in-law was in the car the other day, as I say, we're going out to for dinner to this birthday party that we're having for my other brother-in-law. And she was commenting on how high you sit in the back of the car. It's got that sort of stadium style seating, you know, so it's quite nice. You don't feel claustrophobic, even in a dark interior car in the back here. Plus, you've got this big panoramic glass roof, you know, which, okay, it stops just in front of the rear occupants' heads, but even so, it lets a lot of light into the cabin. But there's good headroom, there's loads of sort of like foot room. There's my seat, my driver's seat is at the lowest point, and I can still tuck my feet under there with a big pair of boots on, so that's good. There's a big transmission tunnel, in fairness, though, you know, so if you're a middle person sat there, they're going to have to straddle that. But in terms of the two sort of like outer rear occupants, that's absolutely fine. But I say again, you'd get somebody in the middle there. Again, my daughter, you know, was in the middle for a part of the journey, so that was absolutely fine. The ISOFIX points, they're just behind these Velcro panels, so you just lift them up and they're nice and easy to sort of like slot seats into, so that's good, that's ideal. Plus as well, on the back of this particular car, we've got heated rear seats, ventilated rear seats, plus your climate control, so it's a 4-zone climate control, sorry, 3-zone climate control on the car. You've also got 2 USB-C ports there. There's also a 12-volt socket. I should also have mentioned in the boot, there's also a 3-pin plug takeoff. So again, if you're using the car as a workhorse as well, or maybe you're out camping and you need to put a, you know, I don't know, like an electric kettle into it or something like that, you can do from the back there. Plus as well, you get nice grab handles. There's more ventilation on the top here. So again, if you've got dogs in the car or for rear passengers, there's plenty of ventilation for them there. You've got the big mat pockets on the backs of the seats. You flip down the armrest, there's 2 cup holders in there, plus there's more storage down in the door bins, which are really big in shape for 2 big water bottles. So yes, the accommodation in the car is good. You know, as I say, back there it's as you would expect for this type of car and this size of car. If you want anything more, you're going to have to go for an MPV, or dare I suggest something like a Defender 130, which is a physically much larger car. But in terms of, you know, this class, in terms of this size of car, being able to carry 7 people, albeit maybe just over a shorter distance for the 6th and 7th person, there's plenty of room here. There's some good grab handles, you know, so like to get in and out of the car as well. And as I say, with a drop in the window line as well, you don't feel claustrophobic at all. You know, you sit quite high in the car and you get a good view out of this back window, so your kids won't feel car sick in it. So yes, absolutely perfect in terms of accommodation for the Land Cruiser. Right, let's talk about its interior, which I love. I absolutely love this interior. A bit like the outside, the designers and the people who have come up with this, they've just had some thought. They've just really thought about how people are going to use this car, and they've designed it accordingly. Okay, so the first thing you've got, I mean, it's all physical buttons and switches and stuff, but it's not a sort of like a shotgun approach. You know, they're not splattered across the dashboard. They're in the right places, and the stuff works really, really well. So let's just go through it. You've got your 12.3-inch display up here with your infotainment system. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, as you'd expect. And you've obviously got your native navigation. You know, you've obviously go in here for your, you know, your audio system. You know, you can connect up to your phone and all this, just for Bluetooth music or radio. You know, integrated Bluetooth. You know, you've got your car settings, which is not a huge amount of stuff to change. You know, you move into sort of like sync up the front and rear climate system, that type of thing. You know, there's trip information available here if you want to look at, you know, your average economy, that type of thing. Off-road information. Okay, so on old school off-roaders, you used to have inclinometers on dials and stuff up here, but obviously it's all now digitized. So you've got that there. So if that's important to you, it'll show you what you're in, you know, the ratio you're in, the mode that you're in, your angle of your steering, you know, as I say, your gradient, and obviously your incline as well in terms of your roll, your pitch and your roll. So that's your off-road information there. That's quite handy if you're a serious off-roader. And then obviously you can customize various different bits in here, such as your lights, the illumination, the doors, you know, whether it unlocks just the driver's door or all doors, that type of thing. Okay, so that's that. So that's that taken care of. It's fairly straightforward. The one thing I'll say about it, however, is this. The car has got your usual driver assistance systems, speed limit warning, lane keep assist, the two things that I normally turn off. Now, the week before this car arrived, I had the Lexus RZ 300e. I wanted this car that week because I was down in Cornwall, and I really wanted to take this car to Cornwall, but Toyota and I, we couldn't make dates match up and stuff. So they gave me the Lexus to go down. I've reviewed that on Auto EV, and they said, we'll swap it with the Land Cruiser. With the Lexus, if you want to turn it, which uses the same infotainment system, uses the same software, if you want to turn off your lane keep assist or stuff, you just go into your settings, your driver assistance settings, and then all your shortcuts come up and you turn it off. It's fairly simple, you know, it's a two-stage process. I've had this car a week, I've had it 6 days, it's going away tomorrow. I've only found out how to turn it off today. I've been searching everywhere. It's in the dashboard here. You've got to scroll through the menus in the dashboard to find it using the buttons on the steering wheel. You've got to go into a menu and then scroll down, go into that menu and then turn off the bits you don't want. It's a faff. It's a real faff. And it's been really annoying this last week. You know, you drive along, and okay, the answer is don't speed, but you know, you do 31 miles an hour and it starts beeping at you. That's really annoying. Okay, it's only 3 beeps, but it still does it. And it's such a faff to turn it off. Don't know why they couldn't have it just as a button on the steering wheel, or just use it like Lexus does. Put it in here, which, as I say, I was used to doing. So I don't know why that's different, but anyway, it is. So that I find annoying, but that's about it. This bank of switches here is all your climate control system. And look at it, you know, you've got your heated seats either side there, ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, your auto climate, you know, your ventilated, as I say, seats there. And then here is your, oh, sorry, I've turned that on, sorry, whoa. It's really hot today, I should really have it on. And then there's temperature control there, your fan speed, the mode, where you want direction to go, and that. And what you can do is you can rest your arm, see this little ledge here, you can put your fingers on there and just use your thumbs on those. That's brilliant. And it's the same for this, you know, driving down. And we'll talk about how sort of shaky the car can be at times, you know, you just put your hand, you heel your hand on there and just use the screen. That's really thoughtful. I did hear that somebody said that this had been designed by the guys that do the Dakar rally cars. You know, what they felt, you know, is at high speed, how easy things are to use. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But there you go. What a simple solution. And the materials, absolutely phenomenal. Everything is just quality. And the other thing that I really like about it, it's a really, really simple thing. A really simple thing, okay? See down the side of the console here and down this side of the door, it's padded. Just literally a square patch of padded material, exactly where your knees are. So if you're off-roading, you know, and you're banging your knees, it's all cushioned. It's the same on the door. It's the one panel on the door that's got cushioning on it. It's exactly where your knee is. So if you're going down a road like this, or even just you're on a long drive and you've got your leg to the side, you can rest your knee on it. It's really comfortable. It's thoughtful. It's the same on the other side. Absolutely thoughtful. Really like that. Then there's the other switch gear that you get. So you've got a big volume control underneath here for your audio system, but there's obviously one on the steering wheel as well. You can increase the idle as well. So if you're powering off, you know, tools and you need to increase the idle up, there's also the view for the camera. So you can see here's your 360-degree camera, and it's also got the transparent image of the car. Don't know if you can see that properly from there, but you can see it. See? And then you can just see what's around the car at any point. So if you're, you know, if you're coming through maybe some rocks or something, you can see if they're close to the car there. That's good. Then you've got connectivity down here. You've got two USB-C ports, sorry, three USB-C ports, an HDMI port, wireless charging there, and then you've got buttons down here. Now I'll move on to the four-wheel drive buttons in a second, but let me just talk about this one here. There's a great big knob here that you turn this. This is for your driving modes, okay? So when you're driving normally, you've got sport, normal, and eco on that one there, okay? But if I then press MTS, which is a button down here, that changes that to deep snow, mud, sand, dirt, and auto. So that will then reconfigure it. So it's just the one thing, with the press of the button, it changes its functionality. That's really good. And then, of course, you've got your crawl function there. You've got your downhill. Now, the crawl function is like a hill descent, and it will crawl both down and up the hill as well at a set speed. So as I say, proper engineering, proper off-road engineering in this. Then you move to these ones at the back here, where you've got two locking diffs. You've got a locking centre diff and a locking rear diff as well, okay? And the reason that you don't have a front diff is because you can disconnect the stability bar, the anti-roll bar at the front. Now, why would you do that? Well, you would do that if you're maybe in a place like this where you need big axle articulation, because obviously a wheel will drop so far if you're going over a hole, and then it might be dangling in there because it's limited by its roll bar. If you can disconnect that and drop it that bit further, then the wheel can then maybe make contact with the ground. So it gives you an extra, I think they say the axle articulation on this car is 20% better than the one previously, and having that then increases that by another 10%. There's no air suspension on it, it's coil springs, as I say, but having that really makes a difference, especially, as I say, if you use it in a place like this. And then you've got your high range and low range here, so that little toggle switch is that there. Proper big transmission lever there as well. Look at that, you know, proper big thing there. None of this button malarkey or dials, it's a big transmission lever. Now I'm going to start it, so forgive me, because I want to turn the wheel a little bit so I can see what I'm doing here. Now the instrumentation panel is digitized, so you've got two dials plus a center bit, which you can configure slightly, okay? So you can have this changed how you want it in some respects. Let me turn that off. So on the right hand side I've got the speedometer, on the left I've got the rev counter, and in the center I've just got a digital speed readout. And then in the center of the dials you can configure what they show you. So for instance here I've got the audio and a trip meter, but if I want to show the four-wheel drive system where the power's being distributed to, you can put that into there. If you want a map in the center, you can put that in. It's quite a basic one, but you can put the map in the center there. So you can configure it. It's white on black. it's a display, so I think it's another 12.3 inch display. It's quite good, it's quite legible, but it takes your eyes a little while to adjust. The only downside, as I say, there is so much to go through, you know, to sort of like configure it, you know, to change your settings. It's not quite as easy as just some cars are, where you just press them and that's it. You've got to spend a bit of time figuring out where stuff is. And that's what I say, I found that speed limit warning thing completely by mistake when I was trying to configure the dashboard, and that's where it is. That's not good enough, I don't think, but there you go. Steering wheel, really nice, round, leather wrapped, nice size, nice and easy to hold. You get your driver attention monitor camera above the steering column there, and then round, obviously the buttons on the steering wheel are things like your cruise control, your media control, your volume, and your mode for your source for there. Okay, so that's that. Right, comfort, off the chart. These seats are phenomenally good. Leather is standard, even on the Invincible model. You've also got an extendable squab, a manually extending squab, just by an extra couple of inches, but it's enough, and it's really nice. And as I say, on the drive down on the motorway today, it was really nice just to have that, give a bit extra support underneath. I could do hours in this car. So gutted I couldn't take it to Cornwall, because I could sit in this car for hours and not feel achy at all. But it's the quality, everything. There's not a squeak, there's not a rattle, there's not a creak, a groan, even coming down here. This car's done over 8,000 miles, and I know you think that's not a lot, but some press cars get hammered, and I'm sure this has probably done its fair bit of off-roading, but there isn't a squeak, a rattle, a creak, or a groan from it, and everything just feels like it'll outlast cockroaches when the apocalypse comes. It's fabulous. And it feels quite luxurious. You know, the leather is actually quite nice. You know, it's soft. It's, you know, the armrests are padded and they're soft. There's no hard materials in here. And all the buttons as well, when you press them, they've got quite a nice damped action to them. And again, this sort of like mode dial here, when you turn it, it just feels good. It just clicks into place. It's just, oh, it's the little things like that that really please me. And it just feels like it'll last forever. JBL sound system, really good. You know, can't complain about that sound system at all. And as I say, the comfort's off the chart. Storage, well, you've got a cool box down in here, but so it does limit the actual sort of size of the thing there. But you drop your Mars bars in there and press a button and it'll keep them refrigerated for you. You've got good sized door bins. I've got 2 cup holders here, obviously, for my bits and pieces. And then obviously there's a glove box over there, which in fairness will just take the handbooks. It's not as big as the lid would have you believe. The interior mirror, this is quite cool as well, because it's got one of these cameras at the back, so if you flick it up, it's now a camera view, and if you push it away, it's a standard rear view mirror. You would do that if you maybe, like say, had 7 people on board, or maybe you had all your gear in the back and all loaded up to the roof, so that'll allow you to see behind the car if you've got loads of stuff behind you. But I have to say, wearing my sunglasses this morning, that was quite difficult to focus on. It was better having it just as a rear view mirror, so at least you can have it with that sort of like ability to change it. But this is absolutely one of the best bits about the Land Cruiser, is this interior. It's phenomenal. It's well built, it's comfortable, it feels like it'll last, the materials are brilliant, it's easy to use with proper physical buttons. That's a bit complicated trying to turn certain things off, but other than that, what a brilliant place to spend time in. So I love the styling, I love the interior, I love the practicality. There's got to be a downside, hasn't there? And I'm afraid there is, and it's here. It's under the bonnet. You see, the engine that the Land Cruiser uses is a 2.8 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel unit from the Hilux pickup, and that produces just 202 brake horsepower, albeit 500 newton meters of torque. Now, it's a permanent all-wheel drive car, as you'd expect, and it delivers drive through a very slick and new automatic transmission, and that's fine. The transmission is absolutely fine. It's the engine that I've got a bit of a problem with. When everybody else is using big 6-cylinder turbo diesels, you know, Land Rover, or you know, an Ineos with the Grenadier with the BMW straight 6, or they're using hybridization or stuff, Toyota have stuck with this, and it is the Achilles heel of the car, and I'll talk a lot more about it when we're out driving it, but it is a bit of a downside with this car. 202 brake horsepower is not a huge amount to lug around this car. That being said, 500 newton meters of torque isn't to be sniffed at, and it will tow up to 3.5 tonnes, this car, so it's good from that point of view. Fuel economy, Well, they reckon mid-20s. On the run down here today, I was averaging 28 to 29, so it's not exactly brilliant when it comes to that. And that's another downside when it comes to the emissions. Over 280 grams per kilometre of CO2 puts this into the highest tax bracket. So the first registration, first road tax on this car from this year onwards is like over £5,000. So it puts it into like supercar territory in terms of just taxing the car. That's a bit of a downside as well for me. Now, I did say I'd talk a little bit more about the suspension and stuff when I was in this sort of like section here, and I will do. So rather than what you would normally maybe expect its rivals to have, you know, such as the Defender with air springs, Toyota haven't. They've stuck with standard coil springs, and there's a reason for that. And in fairness, that's something to be applauded, because when you use air suspension on a car, especially one that's going to maybe have the rough and tumble of something like the Land Cruiser, at some point something will fail. Now, whether it's a sensor, whether it's a pump, whether it's a bag, you know, that they use for the air compressors, or a compressor unit, whatever, something may fail. And Toyota say that isn't acceptable enough, especially when you think to the far-flung corners of the globe that the Land Cruiser is used. They want to keep it relatively simple. So by using coil springs, it means, they're less likely to break in the first place. But if they do, it's a simple case of replacing a spring. You know, that's the difference. So it's easy to maintain from that point of view. And as I say, easy to fix. Should it go wrong, not if it goes wrong, should it go wrong, because remember, it's a Land Cruiser we're talking about, in the far-flung corners of the world. Now, talking of which, warranty. You get your standard 3-year Toyota warranty with the car. However, as with all other Toyota and Lexus products, if you service the car every year through its servicing schedule, so its recommended servicing schedules at your local friendly Toyota dealership, they'll add on another year's warranty onto it. So you can warranty this car up to 10 years or 100,000 miles, which I think is exceptional. All of that's great. I just wish they hadn't used that engine. And you'll see why when we now go out for a drive. So it would seem remiss of me, not in this section, in the performance and handling section, to try and see if the Land Cruiser is actually a good off-roader. So I'm going to drive it up here, which is very difficult to walk on, but let's see how easy it is to drive on. Oh, bloody hell. Oh, and it's chalk as well, so it's slippy. Bloody hell. Need to be a mountain goat to get up here. Took that in its stride, didn't it? Question now is, will it come back down? Let's find out. Piece of cake. Right, before we go out actually on the road, I do want to just do a little bit of, well, shall we say, off-road work with the car, because this is exactly what the Land Cruiser was designed for. You know, places like this that are, you know, full of sort of like, you know, water runs down muddy tracks that have all dried and given big gullies, and you know, sort of like off-road cambers and this and that and stuff. So let's just see how good it is. I'm not the world's greatest off-roader, but you know, let's just give it a little go and see how we get on with it. Now, Toyota have done a huge amount to this car, you know, in terms of making it better off-road, and it wasn't exactly tardy in the first place. But what you now have is double wishbones up at the front and a 4-link rigid rear axle at the back. They've also put in an additional 84 welds into the chassis and 12 meters of structural adhesive to make it much, much stiffer. In fact, the chassis itself is 50% stiffer than the old car. And combined with the body, that means it is 30% more rigid than the car that went before, which is a phenomenal amount. Now, as I say, it doesn't operate air suspension, it's standard coil springs, because Toyota's engineers feel that, you know, obviously with things such as, you know, air suspension, there's a possibility and a probability that something may go wrong, and whether that is a sensor or whether it is an actual bag itself that goes. And if you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, how are you going to replace all that if a sensor goes? And how are you going to diagnose it? Well, if it's a snapped spring, which, let's be honest, isn't very likely, then what you're going to have is the ability to jack the car up and fix it. So that's why they've stuck with it. It's all about off-road durability. It's all about, you know, sort of like the dependability of Land Cruiser. Its reputation is such that you just cannot risk, you know, sort of like anything being wrong just to give a slightly nicer ride on the road. It's not worth it, is it? But it does have a bit of an issue when it does come to its on-road performance in terms of its ride quality. And for that, we'll need to come off of here and find some roads. Ooh, tarmac. Ooh, lovely. Right, so on-road performance now. So as I say, 202 horsepower, 500 newton meters of torque, 0 to 60, it's between 10 and 11 seconds, let's be honest. It's a heavy old bus, this, 2.5 tons, this thing is. Right, so the suspension we've dealt with. I want to talk about the steering first, because this is the first time a Land Cruiser has had electric power steering. And I have to say, it's really good. It's really very good. Now, the other thing that they've done, and I should have mentioned it maybe when we went off-road, is with the steering column itself, it's more rigid, they've enlarged it, so there's more feel, there's more communication comes through it, but it's also more robust, you know, for, dare I suggest, when you do venture away from the smooth stuff. So again, a lot of effort's been put into it, you know, for off-road stuff that they know the Land Cruiser's good at, but making it good on-road as well. And as I say, I think this is a really good steering on the car. There's a nice weight behind the actual steering wheel itself. Sorry, that's the speed limit one. I've just dropped to a 30 and I'm doing 33 miles an hour. Sorry, Your Honour. There's a really nice weight to the steering of the Land Cruiser. And whilst it is a big old bus, you do know where the wheels are pointing. You know, you do get good feedback from the actual steering wheel itself. You know, I'm not talking about pin sharp handling. I'm not saying it drives like a 911 or even a Supra. Of course I'm not. What I'm saying is, however, you know, it's not vague. It doesn't move around in your hands all the time. You know, when you're out on the road, it doesn't feel sloppy. You know, it feels precise. It feels well damped, well judged. And as I say, when you turn in, you know exactly where the wheels are going. So that's good. So I like the steering. The brakes as well, I've got a nice, there's nothing behind me, fight. A nice weight behind the pedal and a really nice progressiveness to the way the car pulls up. You know, it's not snappy, it's not grabby, it just, you know, it feels hydraulic. That's the best way I can use to describe it. It's like a hydraulic, sort of like, you know, actuation on the brakes. It's really, really nice. What am I doing? It's a 40 limit here. Why are you beeping at me? I'm doing 38 miles. Oh no, it's a 30. Why has it changed from a 30 to 40 to 30? How odd. Anyway, there we go. Right. But now we move on to one of the problems with the car, and it is the separate chassis, because there's no getting away from it. You can't avoid this sort of chassis shimmy, if you like, because it's a body on frame style of construction, which is brilliant for off-road ability. But as I say, on the road, as soon as you hit a drain hole cover, a manhole cover, you know, a ridge, an expansion joint, or just even a little just dip in the road, you just get that little shimmy. You can't escape it. And it's a real shame in some respects, because as I say, other than that, the ride quality, the comfort that you get from the car is fantastic. I came down, the M20. I came down from the M25 and the A3 today, and on motorway speeds, you know, on, you know, sort of like a 3-lane motorway at 70 miles an hour, this thing, it does not say it glides, but you know, you certainly don't feel like you're in anything that has a separate chassis. You know, it's just really smooth in the way that the car behaves. I really like it. But then we get to the Land Cruiser's biggest problem for me, and it's what's up there, this engine. There is no getting away from the fact that it is far too coarse and far too agricultural a power unit for a car that, you know, dare I suggest, does everything else so well. Now again, at motorway speed, it all settles down, the noise disappears and stuff. But as soon as you come off a slip road and you've got to accelerate, or as soon as, you know, just there, we've come out of the, you know, the 40 mile speed limit. If I put my foot down, it's just noisy. You can't escape that sorry, I've just creeped over. You can't escape that diesel clatter, you know, and it's just such a shame. If this had a big straight six diesel in it, I've got a Jeep Grand Cherokee with a 3 litre V6 turbo diesel, much smoother than this, and it's 13 years old, you know. And you know, Land Rover, you know, the Defender's got, you know, 6-cylinder units in it. The Ineos Grenadier, another big competitor for the car, 6-cylinder petrol or diesel. Now, I didn't mention this before, and I should have done. There is a mild hybrid Land Cruiser coming in 2025, but it's not a hybrid, it's not a plug-in hybrid. But Toyota say it's, you know, the idea behind is that it will smooth things out, it will make things just a little bit smoother and more refined. In other words, it'll probably pull away in electric mode before the engine starts. That's going to help it, no doubt about it, but it's not going to cure it, I don't think. You know, it's not going to get away from what is ultimately just too noisy an engine, just too tractor-like for such a car. And as I say, when it does everything else right, you know, and as I say, I can put up with the chassis shimmer on it. I really can. I can put up with that if the engine was just a bit smoother. If this had a big straight six diesel in it, or you know, or V6 turbo diesel, even that bonging noise that takes me 12 stages to go through menus to turn the bloody thing off, I could tolerate that if it just had a smoother lump under the bonnet. And it's a real shame, it really is. Performance-wise is okay, in fairness. You know, when you actually put your foot down, sorry, if you're hearing a rattle, by the way, can I just explain, it's my camera equipment and not the car. The car is really exceptionally quiet. It is the camera equipment that's rattling. That's how good, well built a Land Cruiser is. My cameras are rattling before the car is. But see there, just accelerating up to 60. And it gets there, but just noisily, and you know it's doing it. And it's such a shame. It's such a shame. Because the rest of it is brilliant. But it's such a fundamental part of the car. You know, if you said it had slightly grabby brakes, you know, or, you know, the fuel economy is dreadful on it, but, you know, the engine's lovely, you know, that you could tolerate that. But it's the engine itself. It's the fundamental power plant. But as I say, when you're actually at speed, it all settles down. But as soon as you need to put your foot down, and it's not particularly quick. Others do it better. Sorry. Price. Well, it's not a cheap car. This is a first edition car, which you can no longer buy new. They've sold out. You can also buy a pre-owned one, but this was £80,000 new. So the standard car is the Invincible, just the one trim level, and that's the one that gets the sort of like the rectangular lights at the front, which I do quite like. I have to admit, I can't just decide. I see both and I go, oh, what would I choose? I don't know. I like both, but that's the way you can tell an Invincible to a first edition. The first edition will have these round lights, and usually in a much nicer colour, in fairness. Now, the Invincible model is just over £77,000, and everything is standard on the car. So the leather, the 7 seats, the side running boards, the 18-inch wheels, you know, the heated seats, the ventilated seats, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, etc., etc., etc. All you're basically doing is choosing your colour albeit from a very limited range, and whether you want a tow bar on it and some boot liners and, you know, side moulding strips, that's it. Okay, the only thing, as I've said before, before we went out for a drive, just watch, because it does fall into the high tax bracket when you first register because of the emissions on the car. So it's over £5,000 to register the car when it's brand new. On saying that, you obviously, as I said again previously in the technical section, you do get Toyota's brilliant warranty with it. So you can warranty the car up to 10 years or 100,000 miles, as long as you service it with your Toyota dealer Toyota servicing schedules. So there's pluses and minuses for it. Very well equipped to standard, no options on the car, brilliant warranty, you're going to have brilliant reliability from it because it's a Land Cruiser, but it's expensive to buy in the first place. The other flip side, however, is go and take a look at residuals on Land Cruisers, because these things hold their value better than a bucket holds water. Right, competition. Okay, there are 3 cars that I see as the main sort of like competitor for this car, and one other that's maybe not so obvious to begin with. Okay, so the 3 ones are, naturally, I think, first of all, the Land Rover Defender. Of course, that's a car that you're going to look at and go, well, you know, it's a natural rival for it. The only thing with Defender is obviously you can get different body styles. You know, you can have the 90, you can have the 110, you can have the 130 if you need that extra length. And of course, in terms of the running gear, you know, there's hybrids available, there's diesels, there's petrols, so there's a lot more choice with Defender. But obviously in some respect, and I've got to be careful what I say, the problem I think with Land Rover at the moment, they're selling them by the bucket load, which is great from the company's point of view. But from an image point of view, you know, the people that drive around a Defender these days, they won't know half of what that car's capable of. But I'm just going to leave that as it is there. So that's by the by. Then there's the Ineos Grenadier, which effectively is sort of like maybe a more true replacement for the old Defender. That was their idea behind it. And again, of course, you can have that in various different forms, can't you? You can have it as a station wagon, you have it as a utility, you know, like a van, like, and you can also have, I think they call it the Quartermaster, which is like the pickup bit at the back. So again, maybe from a point of view of versatility, if you're looking at it from a working vehicles point of view, maybe that offers you a little bit more. The third car that I think that it competes with, believe it or not, I think, is the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. You know, again, a bit like the Land Cruiser. Traditional look, but now very modernised by Mercedes-Benz. You know, with modern running gear, modern interior, you know, modern technology underneath the car, and of course you can now have that as an electrified model as well. So those are the 3 main rivals I think that you're going to naturally look at when you're maybe considering the Land Cruiser, certainly from price point, certainly from the point of view of physical size and what it offers you. Because you don't really get the cars like you used to get back in the 80s. You know, there's no Mitsubishi Shogun in the UK anymore, you know, there's no Isuzu Troopers, you know, the mainstream manufacturers, you know, Stellantis Group, you know, Peugeot, Citroën, Vauxhall, they don't offer big 4x4s like this. So it's a very small market. However, I did mention Stellantis there. They do have a brand that I think offers a rival for this car that's not as obvious as maybe most people think, and that's Jeep with the Wrangler. And I think that's a brilliant car. And that was one of the first cars I reviewed. In fact, it was the first car I reviewed on House of Cars. I took one of my family to Scotland in it, and the Lake District, and actually spending a week with the Wrangler. It's a very capable car on road now, as an everyday family car. You'd be surprised how good that car is. And when you think of off-road ability, Land Rover, Land Cruiser, Jeep, the 3 are the best. So also there's the Wrangler to consider. But it is a smaller marketplace than you would normally get for these typical sort of SUVs that seem to have now taken over the modern automotive landscape. When it comes down to it, this is the best Land Cruiser that Toyota have ever built. No questions asked. It's a fabulous car in a huge amount of different ways. And everyone that I've had in the car has absolutely loved it. They've loved the way that it looks, they've loved the comfort, they've loved the space that it offers. It's just a brilliant car in a lot of ways. But it has one massive flaw, and it's that engine. Now, the chassis limitations I could sort of put up with in some respects, on-road limitations I could put up with if it had a better power unit, but it doesn't. And what that then does is it highlights that other flaw that it has with it. And it's a real shame, because Toyota say they've gone to great lengths to make this the best, most refined Land Cruiser that they could possibly have done. So goodness knows what it would have been like if they hadn't have done that. And therefore I'm just stopping short of calling it a brilliant car, because in all other respects it is. Whether it's off-road, whether it's, you know, using it as a family car or whatever, it is brilliant in a lot of other ways. But it's just that one thing that draws it back. However, I have never been so divided when it comes to delivering a verdict on a car, because I absolutely adore it. Would I put up with that engine to own this car? I'm really not sure that I would. I genuinely can't decide. So what I will do is I'll leave this as the verdict. If you are in the marketplace for the car, for a car of this stature, you know, you've got 80 odd thousand pounds to spend on a big, proper off-road workhorse, and dare I suggest, if you've had another brand that's maybe let you down when it comes to reliability stakes, not naming any names, then it's well worth going and have a look at it and seeing whether or not you could put up with it. And maybe then that makes us understand more the love and the respect that we have for the Land Cruiser, the fact that we can still potentially look past such a big flaw with a car because the rest of it is so good. Thank you for watching yet another road test review on House of Cars. I hope you've enjoyed it. Could you please make sure that you're subscribed to the House of Cars channel, if you don't mind? And then once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed the review, and as I say, I sincerely hope you have, then give it a little thumbs up for me. And don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think? Have you been and driven this car? Would you put up with that engine to own the Land Cruiser? Have you done it? Have you gone and bought one? Are you getting on okay with it? Let me know. Did you not buy it because of the engine? Have you gone and bought something else? Would you walk past a Land Rover showroom towards a Toyota one to get one of these? That's the big question for me. Now, if you're interested in following me on social media, I'm on Instagram and it's at House of Cars 1973. So if you want to give me a follow there, I'd certainly appreciate it. And whether or not it is a big car or a small car, a slow car or a fast car, an old car or a new car, you'll find them all here in the House of Cars. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.